What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another My Week With video. So this week I've been driving the 2024 Chevy Blazer EV, and this is the RS trim in particular. And so as far as the Blazer goes, well, it was a mixed bag. Now, the one thing I have to say is that this vehicle was completely reliable all week. You know, there was a lot of news about, you know, the stop sale and the recall for these. That has all been fixed, and it seems like those issues, knock on wood, are behind them. This vehicle was flawless all week as far as, you know, its usability. Everything worked exactly right. And I'm really happy to hear that because it's a really fantastic vehicle. I love the Blazer EV on my first drive of it. I will link that video at the end of this one if you want to hear all the details of what it's like to drive this vehicle, all the specs, all the info on this vehicle will be in that. This is just a follow-up video, and there's a few things I wanted to follow up on. The first was, you know, how it drove around my own roads. I was just in some, you know, beach town, California kind of roads whenever I first drove this. It was very nice in that kind of an area, but driving it on more windy roads here now in southwestern Pennsylvania where I live, it is really fantastic. And we are owners of a Mach-E, and that's one of the main competitors to this vehicle, and I just have to say they've done everything basically better than Mach-E. It handles better, partially thanks to these way wider tires. 275 wide tires all around on this RS with these 21-inch wheels versus 225s on the Mach-E. Skinny little tires, don't have a ton of grip. Now, you know, I will say that it'll be cheaper to replace 225s versus these big 275s once it comes time to replace them. But at least from a driving standpoint, the Blazer is the clear winner here as far as all the driving dynamics goes. It definitely feels like a little bit of a larger vehicle as well, but it feels like a mid-size SUV, which is what you're going for with one of these. That's the, you know, where they're classified as well. And you know, it certainly feels the part. The other things I really love about the Blazer are, you know, the power delivery is really nice and smooth, very predictable ramp up to the gas pedal, so it doesn't feel like it's trying to rip your head off like some other EVs sometimes are. It's just very progressive, feels really good. I also love the brake calibration. That's something else the Mach-E does not do well. We've had that thing for 2 years now basically, and I'm still like, it's still a little tricky to be smooth with the brakes in that vehicle. This vehicle, the first drive, you'll be smooth with these brakes. They're very well calibrated. It feels normal. It feels like a regular gas car. There's no weirdness to it, and they just did that really well. And again, that's something that isn't a given. It's a lot of companies, not only Ford, Mercedes, and many others, can't figure out brakes on EVs. They all feel weird. This feels normal. So I really have to underline and applaud Chevy for just how well they set this up. Steering also feels nice and normal and feels really good too. And you know, this whole vehicle too was so smooth with the ride. Even though we're on these 21-inch wheels, it doesn't feel like 21s. It was like such a buttery smooth ride all week, and some other EVs aren't, you know, quite this good. I think the Mach-E is close, but that's just because it gives up so much in handling. This gives you the handling and still a really good ride. And you know, again, that's something that not everyone can balance very well. So from a dynamic standpoint, the Blazer is a home run, like basically perfectly done in my mind. And I also love that they added some things that the Mach-E doesn't have. So, you know, we have cooled seats here, which was very nice on this these hot summer days I was testing this, something that you can't get in the Mach-E and many of the other competitors here. Same thing goes, this one doesn't have the moonroof equipped, but when you get the moonroof, you get a closing shade, something Tesla doesn't offer, something that Ford doesn't offer. You have that here with this. So I think, you know, Chevy filled in all the little gaps where the competitors haven't done what they should have done, and Chevy corrected all those things. And so I think that for a lot of people, this is going to be a really nice upgrade and improvement to even some of the small livability things. Efficiency was also pretty good. So over my 71 miles of driving that I did here over the course of this week, my miles per kilowatt hour has been 3.0. So pretty good. You know, I think the Mach-E might be slightly better, but I think part of that's because, again, the skinnier tires on that. I kind of admire Chevy for not going for ultimate efficiency, at least with the RS versions here. And so, you know, still a nice big battery, still have plenty of range, good charging speeds and all that. So, you know, shouldn't be a big deal. And I think for, again, the everyday driving, not just the once a year that you road trip potentially, you know, for everyday driving, this is going to drive so much better than the Mach-E and, many of the other competitors. And it just feels really good. I also have to say that it feels larger and more substantial than some of the other stuff that is similarly priced, like the Ioniq 5 or the Kia EV6, which, you know, feel like they're kind of like large hatchbacks in a lot of ways. This feels like a proper large SUV. And so if you're someone who's, again, shopping in the $50,000 to $60,000 price range, like this one as tested is right around $60,000, it feels a little more substantial for that money than some of those others do, which admittedly do usually stay under this price point. This is a little more expensive than most of the others, but with everything kind of ballooning in price these days, this isn't far off. And so I think that it's, it is still a little bit of a price premium, unfortunately, for the Blazer, but I think that for those who want a larger, better handling vehicle, I think, this is definitely going to feel kind of worth that money. And one other cool little thing that I appreciated was that charge light you see there whenever you have this vehicle plugged in. I don't know how great that'll be for the longevity of that light bar in the front, but it seems like even whenever I didn't have the key in my pocket, it was always lit up doing that animation there the entire time the vehicle was charging. So it's going to be on a lot, but it's a really cool thing to see in the garage there charging up. And, just a nice little touch, I think, adds a little bit of extra fun to the ownership experience of the Blazer EV. But one giant caveat that doesn't, to me at least, add to the ownership experience here of the Blazer EV is this infotainment system, which was the big thing I wanted to live with this week. This is my first chance to live with this new screen that doesn't have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but Chevy swears up and down that this is better or totally fine, and I will say I'm an Apple user, and before I start my little rant here, I will say that if you are an Android user, you will be probably minimally affected because you're probably already used to Google Assistant, you're used to all the Android stuff, all the Play Store apps, and with this, you won't have much of an issue. It still has all that Google stuff built in. You can download all your same apps from the Play Store, put them right in the car natively. Now, I will say that you have to do all of that yourself, so it does identify which apps are on your phone and will offer, whenever you create a new profile, to automatically install those ones. But it's just that, you're going to have to spend an hour sitting in this vehicle, downloading all of your apps, getting everything set up, granting everything permission like you do on your phone, signing into every single app so that it works on the car. It's an extra step. And even if you're an Android user, guess what? When you have Android Auto, you just plug your phone in, or you sync it up if it's wireless, Android Auto. You just plug it in or sync it up, and everything is right there, and everything works immediately. So there is an instant, tax to having the system of just setting it up, which is a pain. Obviously, as a reviewer, it's something that I have more of a pain point with because I'm setting up my phone in every single vehicle every single week. If you're owning one of these, that's going to hopefully be a one and done thing, and you won't have to deal with this headache after that. And so again, for Android people, yes, it takes you a few extra minutes to get your stuff all set up, but once it's set up, it should be totally fine, and I think that you won't have any complaints. But if you're an Apple user like I am, there's none of the Apple apps in the App Store, or the Play Store, I should say. So, if you use Apple Music, you have to switch to a different music app. If you like Apple Maps, you have to switch to another map, system. If you like Apple Podcasts, sorry, you got to find another podcast app. On and on, all these things. If you are in the Apple ecosystem, texting, that was the big thing. So I made the mistake of setting things up in the wrong order, so I had to set everything up twice, which was extra aggravating. But basically, what you're going to do first is actually set up a profile, and in that profile, you got to sign into your Google account, give it permission for Google to see everything, which if you're an Apple person that doesn't use Google products, you might not love that, but you got to let Google have access to everything. But then once you're signed in, through your Gmail account, then you're able to use everything normally. Now, it is still a few extra steps. You got to go on your iPhone and manually allow it to read your text messages. You have to also go in and grant Google Assistant access to read your text messages and allow it to do personalized stuff, so it can actually read names and all of that. So I can't tell you how many times I granted permission to things over and over again. I had to double sign into things, and it was two-step verification, so it had to then text my phone to confirm, and then let me into all of these things that I'm signing into. Again, hopefully this is a one-and-done issue, but it's just, again, budget yourself an hour to figure this car out once you buy it, because it's just like so many, things of signing up, signing in, on and on. It's just like, it's a little bit aggravating, to be completely honest. It doesn't give you the best first impression. Your brand new vehicle, and you're going to spend an hour just signing your stuff away to a bunch of different permissions and a bunch of different, hoops you have to jump through, and saying okay to a bunch of different pages. It's just, and then I'll go to a new app, and then I'm like, oh wait, I didn't do that for this one yet. I got to go and accept a bunch of stuff again for that. But once everything is done and you've taken a deep breath, like I had to do, everything works really well for the most part. Like Google Maps is really good. It's really snappy. I had to navigate somewhere. I just literally said, I'm going to say it's this, and I wasn't even totally sure of the exact naming of what I was saying, and it figured it out and navigated me to it perfectly. And it's really well done. It's really quick and snappy for this whole system too, and so lots of good stuff here for sure, but you know, again, it just would require, if you're an Apple user, a compromise as far as changing all of your other apps over to non-Apple stuff. And I did try doing some voice texting here, you know, with Google Assistant with my iPhone, and it worked fine, except it didn't do capitalization and didn't do any punctuation either, which Siri does do, at least on my phone with my experience. So, you know, whenever I was texting Beth, like, she knew that I was texting from the Blazer because it was, you know, just doing lowercase stuff, and it didn't look like my texting. And even with Siri, if it gets it wrong, when you're doing Siri texting, it says this text sent by Siri underneath, so you know, oh wait, they're not, this doesn't sound like them, but it's okay because it's Siri. This has no disclaimer, so people might think someone stole your phone the first time you're texting from your Blazer if you have an iPhone, because it doesn't look like your regular texting typically. But you know, it's fine. The only other thing I will say though is you still can't browse conversations. It's all voice. There is no, you know, in CarPlay you can, you know, pick which conversation you want to pick up and then start doing texting. This, you just have to remember maybe who texted you and then, you know, just say what you want to say, and that's fine. So, I mean, it kind of works. The only other thing too is getting to your notifications. There's a tiny little bell in the upper right corner of this big screen. You kind of have to reach up to touch it. It'll pull down the notification drawer, but then putting the notification drawer back, it like doesn't want to go up. It's not very well done. There's no home button when you're on that notification page either to even exit out of it that way. So you have to like sit there. It was like 3 times trying to swipe up. So there's still some UI stuff here I think that could use some polishing. And despite everything that Chevy has said, now that I've lived with it, no, it's not better than CarPlay, and it's not even as good as CarPlay. It's still a pain if you're an Apple user. So I really have to say the Blazer EV is a great vehicle if you're an Android user. If you're an Apple person that's hooked into the Apple ecosystem, this is just, it's going to be more obtuse. If you love this vehicle enough, if you don't like the other competing vehicles for whatever reason, you know, I think that this is going to be fine. It's doable. Would I choose to do it? No. Even though it's better than a Mach-E, it's just easier to work my phone in the Mach-E, and for us, that's a deal breaker. I mean, me and my wife, both of us, it's like if a car's not a CarPlay, it's a deal breaker. And many of you, when I initially complained about this last year, whenever this was announced, a lot of you agreed, and I just really wish that Chevy would just offer the option. They say that, you know, doing the in-car based navigation routing is better and more reliable. That's fine. I can understand and appreciate that, but they're trading one unreliability for another because, yes, Maps works great in here, but guess what didn't work great? Bluetooth audio streaming. I had to stream everything the old-fashioned way over my phone, and it was cutting out of the Bluetooth connection. CarPlay is typically more reliable in my experience, and also CarPlay gives you high-res album art. The album art in here is streaming through Bluetooth, and it's this low-res pixelated image on this giant, beautiful screen. Does it no justice whatsoever? And so, sure, maybe, you know, whenever I'm navigating, it's going to be a little bit quicker, and maybe it's better predicting range and stuff. But whenever I'm doing all the things I'm doing more often, like music and texting and things like that, it's a worse experience. It's just a worse experience. There's no way around it. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's a worse experience if you're an Apple user. And so I think it's really going to draw a line in the sand for this vehicle, unfortunately, and prohibit a lot of people from getting what is otherwise a really great vehicle. And it also doesn't have to be this way, because even Google Maps through Android Auto does EV routing already. And like with our Mach-E, Ford is hooked up with Apple, and our Mach-E with Apple Maps will intelligently route us to charging stops. So it's not like Chevy has some monopoly on doing any kind of EV routing. Like, you can do that with the other apps through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as well. So, you know, I can't find any justification for this outside of just Chevy wanting things to be in their walled-off garden and have them, you know, not have to share the data with other people and stuff. And, you know, it is what it is. They made the decision. I hope they reconsider someday. But in the meantime, you know, it is what it is. I wish, again, that you didn't have to make this choice. The only other consolation prize I can give you is if you really like the Ultium platform, if you have extra money to spend. As of right now, Lyric, I believe, still does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But if you don't have the extra money to spend, I will also add that the Honda Prologue and the Acura ZDX are also based on GM's Ultium platform. It's a partnership that Honda and GM have. Now, you're not going to get the Blazer's looks. The Blazer's cool interior. It's a little more plain in the Honda, but if styling isn't the end-all be-all for you, you just want this Ultium platform, but you want CarPlay, those offer it. Honda offers it, and so does Acura with their models. So the only other, you know, alternative I can offer outside of just the other regular competitors, which basically all these days have CarPlay. Now, Tesla doesn't still, you know, Rivian doesn't. So there's, you know, a couple others that have tried to, you know, break away from that, and maybe they will ultimately be successful, maybe not. But I think there's still a lot of people where not having that as a deal breaker for Tesla buyers and for Rivian buyers as well, who end up, you know, just going for a competitor instead. So it just comes down to how strongly you feel about that. Some people don't care about CarPlay and stuff, and they say, oh, well, what did you do before CarPlay? What I did before CarPlay was I was a lot more distracted. I was trying to text at red lights or pull over, or most people just were texting while driving. You had to fumble with your phone for Bluetooth audio streaming, all these things. Like, we've improved so much because of CarPlay, which, by the way, GM was one of the first to adopt back in 2015 or 2016, and I praised them up and down for their early integration of it way back then, and they had it before many others, and it really gave them an advantage. And so for them to walk away from that advantage that they could have had here with this over Tesla, over Rivian and others, and they gave that up. You know, again, they feel they have their, you know, convictions, and they're convinced that this is the right way forward, and maybe it will be. But just in this transition period, at least, you know, for a lot of people, they're going to go for a competitor. And anyway, I won't rant about that anymore, but that was my big thing this week, and that is my full download now on what it's like to live with this as an Apple user. Your mileage may vary. Everyone's different, but that was my experience, and it wasn't a great one as far as the smartphone integration goes. But like I said, everything else but the Blazer, I really love, and that's part of why I'm so upset about this infotainment system, because it to me ruins in many ways what is otherwise a fantastic car that is almost a perfect EV in all the other ways, really. And so it's a giant caveat. I'll be happy to recommend this vehicle to anyone else that's considering it, but I'll say, as long as you're not an Apple user, I recommend it. That's my bottom line for this vehicle. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the Blazer EV. Be sure to, again, watch my full review if you want to hear all the other stuff about the Blazer EV, and, again, all the other things that are very impressive about it. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the Blazer EV and its lack of smartphone integration in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks once again also to Chevy for providing me with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Take care.